Hello, everyone, and welcome to Digital Publishing Online. And this is Lisa Gabrielle. And today's lecture is going to cover how to create dynamic layouts. Now, early on in the course, I provided you with a handout. I believe it was in the first week of the course, and that handout looks like this. It's called Books and Terms Reference List. And this was a great list for recommendations on textbooks that cover type design and books that may help you in developing your designs and your pages for your type variation book. In addition, at the bottom portion of this handout, and that being this area right here, there were some terms listed here. And what we consider in the field as compositional design terms. And today I'm going to talk about some of these terms and I'm going to show you examples of these terms in utilizing text design. So hopefully you'll be able to make a connection. If you've had 2D design, if you've had drawing class, if you've had basic graphic design, you have probably worked with or are familiar with many or most of these terms. But if you haven't had any of those courses, then for the first time you might be introduced to these terms and what they mean and how to apply them in your design work. So I'm going to cover that today. There's also some links on the internet that you could follow listed here that cover more information about the design principles and how they can impact your designs. Okay, so don't forget to check out this handout. I believe it's in the first week of the class, available for you there. So the next reference source that I'm going to use here is this PDF called Compositional Principles, and this is also located in the classroom. And I'm trying not to refer to any particular week, but the week we're working on dynamic layouts, you will find this PDF. And this is what I'm going to go through during my lecture today. So what we're going to talk about first is color and color value and how to execute both of these principles within your type designs. Okay, I have some examples. I have a couple examples for some of these and one example for others, but um, I thought this was a great example. One can consider this like maybe a propaganda piece. It has some controversial images on here. It has both image and text is utilized here. But what I thought was most interesting about this piece was the actual text content. And what you should look at here in terms of this text is how all of the different blocks of text are being handled. And indeed, some of the different techniques you'll be using on your type phases book are applied here, such as looking over here. I'm going to go ahead and use a pencil to kind of circle areas on here so you can sort of see where I'm talking about. But if you look in this area right here, you'll see that this designer has used type size to show hierarchy, meaning that there's only 3 lines of copy here, but you can tell of which line is the most important. And the way they did that is they used type scale and size, and you'll be doing that in your variations book. You can kind of see the same technique being utilized here as well, where they use type scale and size as well as over here. And you can also see in this example right here that um, in addition to text, they also have a piece of line art in there. So just by mere fact of creating a larger headline or a larger point size, the text becomes dominant. So keep those areas in mind as you're working through your book. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this and clear off my um, PDF here. All right. All right. So those areas um, show emphasis in terms of scale. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this piece in terms of color is the way that it is executing white and black. If you can kind of see in this area over here, as well as this area over here, you'll notice that the text itself has been reversed or knocked out of the black color. And just by the mere fact of knocking the text out of black, it becomes prominent. So you will have a chance to eventually utilize graphic elements, and you will be able to use this technique eventually in your book. I believe it would be phase, let me see. Let's look at the book here. I believe it's phase 6, where you can use field value and graphic elements. That's indeed what these are. This is field value. Whenever you see a black area or a colored area, we consider that field value, or there's some sort of value in a specific field. And you can also say that this area right in through here is being emphasized because of the same technique. There's also some really interesting directional text in here where you can kind of see here, there's diagonal, there's also this area and this area. There's a lot of directional contrast being used here in that the text is contrasting in one direction to another. So you have this text going in one direction and then this text contrasting that in the other direction. So I think there's a lot of that directional text being utilized here. Also, the fact that it's a black and white piece and the stark white background and no elements of gray is quite interesting. And you can kind of notice that the piece itself um, is using body copy to create a sense of gray throughout. So just by the point size of the text itself, it creates a sense of gray about the piece. So again, thinking about point size in terms of your body copy can really be important to emphasize different areas. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this out. Let's see what else is pretty interesting in here. And this example is supposed to be showing examples of color and color value. Let's see what else. I think that covers it pretty much. There's also some interesting color being executed here when you have um, a line going through the copy. It kind of accentuates and emphasizes the copy just because there's a line going through it. So a sense of color is being executed in terms of using that technique as well. The second example here is probably even more specific to showing color and color value because it's actually using color. And eventually you'll get to a point in your phases book, and I believe if we jump back here that you can use color in phase 7 and even in phase 8, as well as you can use color on your cover design. So um, how you use color and how much color you use is all basically up to you and what areas you want to emphasize. But you can kind of see in this particular example how the color of these areas are creating a sense of unity just based on the color. So I might assume as the reader of this article that all of the green copy has some kind of significance and connection, and all of the possibly all of the blue copy has the same kind of significance or emphasis. Um, you can also see how the copy that's in color contrasts the copy that's in black and white. Also, what's interesting about this piece, and a lot of these pieces I show you are not just utilizing one graphic principle or one um, design principle, but many. And it's not just utilizing one type effect. Like for instance, another effect that's being used here that you'll be eventually working with on your type phases is rules. In this example here, there's a whole bunch of rules. You can kind of see them here. To emphasize or to enclose a specific type area. So I thought there was some interesting type treatments on this one as well. Okay, cropping. How to use cropping to accentuate a specific area of your piece. Like for instance, here is an example. Now again, here's a beautiful example of using scale and contrast in size to show emphasis. So the difference in size between this text and this very large Q really lends to accentuate that Q. Also, the interesting way that the Q is cropped is sort of lending to that emphasis. So think about cropping as you're working through this project. It is okay to crop um, a character or a line or a large letter of text. And it's not necessarily always going to work if you try to crop out body copy because again you're supposed to be using at least the entire poem once in each composition, so you want to make sure that the entire poem is legible. So really in terms of an example, this is a good one because this is probably one of the best examples of what you can do with your typefaces book, at least once you get past the third phase. So after the third phase, you can use scale and you can start to use some of these other features to show your interesting type treatments. So cropping, again, another cool tool to use. Okay, depth. As you can kind of see here in this example here, um, again, this is another good example also of using color value in color. You can sort of see how the designer is executing gray value here and here, and especially in through this area here to create a lot of depth in this piece. And I believe in your type phases book that you can begin to use gray value in the second phase, or no, I'm sorry, in the third phase. So you'll have an opportunity to explore gray and gray value. And I also made the comment to many of you in your label designs that you should maybe tint back or use gray value to recede some of the graphics in your labels. So again, this is a good example. You can kind of see how even using darker value on top of a lighter value can give it a sense of popping forward and a sense of depth. So this piece is a great example of depth. This one is another one, how using typography, using different sizes, how you can kind of see these larger point sizes versus the contrast of the smaller point sizes and how that creates a sense of kind of moving backward or a sense of perspective. Even though this is in a foreign language, it still has a sense of depth, and we can still see the point size as body copy down here. Of course, this is in English here, but the larger weight of the typeface, the style is heavier, so it gives us a sense of perspective. So all around, this is kind of an interesting example. Plus, the artwork in the background is drawn to also lead your eye into the piece. Okay, figure ground reversal. I picked this example here because I thought this was a great example of how the designer is not only looking at the copy that prints, such as the shape of the boots, but they're also looking at the negative space or the space that doesn't print. As you can kind of see the white space in here. And I highly encourage you to do the same as you're working through your compositions, that you think about the space that's being printed, which is the text and the black text, as well as what's being created by that text in terms of the white space. So this is a great example. It looks like it's a custom alphabet design, um, but still the same concept applies. Okay, let's see this one here, figure ground reversal again. Another example of a type piece that, if you look closely, um, well, actually, if you kind of sit back a little, you can see this better. But if you kind of step back, you can see that there's a face being created back here by using different value of text. And because of that, you get a great sense of depth. And this text right here, this larger text, because of its size, it really pops forward. And this smaller text and this gray value, because it's lighter and smaller, recedes to the back. And you can kind of get a real sense of depth in this piece. A really nice piece here. I'm sure that this took hours. Okay, form variation. Okay, what is form variation? Well, what this is showing us here is we have several forms. We have this decorative script letter form up here. That's one form. We also have this kind of serif character here, and we also have that same serif character here. These are all considered forms, and because of the thin and thick of these forms, such as over here you have a real thinning, and the contrast of this real thinning text to this real thick text is um, a real interesting contrast. You also have the contrast between something that's very organic and something that's very geometric. So form variation in this is quite prominent, and it's overall a really nice diagonal design. So again, um, there's many things being utilized here. There's also a very open sense about the composition in that it has a good balance of white space elsewhere. Okay, this one here, also another example of form variation in that you have serif text here being utilized at the top, and you have sans serif text here. You also have texture being replicated here next to something that's pretty consistent and almost monochromatic here. And there's overall a sense of texture on this piece, and I think because of that, you get a lot of contrast because they also come in with some really solid kind of consistent shapes. This area and through here, this area and through here. Um, you can sort of see the text back in through this area here, right along this edge. You see this text here. It's also creating a sense of variation where it has like a texture to it because it's almost illegible. I can't really see what it says. But there's some real interesting things here. You also see the use of punctuation as graphic elements, which is something you might consider somewhere in your piece, since the use of punctuation and symbols within your alphabet are indeed using typography. So don't forget about those. Those are available to you to use. Frame of reference. Again, this piece here is kind of frame of reference and cropping are kind of similar. Cropping might be something you would use on an individual basis, where frame of reference actually has a lot to do with the actual size of the composition, the outer edges of the composition, and what you, the designer, decide to show and not show. It's possible that on this composition that there was a lot more to this, but because the designer decided to crop in on this particular view here, we get a sense of a specific idea or a message based on that, because they wanted to maybe emphasize this word fancy, and so they decided to make it kind of large and up towards the top, make it sort of stand out in green as a headline. So because of the positioning of all of the elements and the way it was cropped down by the frame, is something to consider in terms of framal reference. Also, here's another one using framal reference. You can sort of see how interesting this is, activating the left hand of the composition and leaving the other side of the composition completely white. And that stark contrast between white and black really makes this an effective composition. And it's all using framal reference. The frame itself is actually determining what you see and what you do not see. Okay, grouping. And I believe this piece right here by Paula Shear was one of the examples that one of the students used in their discussion from week 1 when you had to research a designer. And you can kind of see here how the designer uses these groupings of text to sort of organize the composition. So because she's got these little groupings, they're almost like units. She set up a sense of structure to this layout, which in turn helps the reader to figure out what this is trying to tell us. Otherwise, it gets a little muddy and messy, sort of like it does up here, where the designer doesn't kind of break it into a unit, and we're sort of confused. Do I read this? Do I read this? Do I read this? So, grouping elements or text or information is a great way to help your viewer figure things out. Here's another example of grouping, how you can see these specific grouping areas. Like here is one, here being another one, and almost all of them are large rectangles if you look at them. And notice the way they span out the text to fill that entire grouping area. And that's including subheads like these, as well as columns of text are spread out to fill the whole area. Here's another grouping here, which is kind of interesting. Here we go. Oh, I see. Okay, I just discovered that I could do that. Okay. All right. That's kind of cool. All right. So grouping, don't forget about it. And also, I have some cool examples. These are all examples, just cool stuff that I have found that might stimulate you or inspire you as you're working through some of your compositions this week. We're looking at producing at least 9 of those, and if you're just doing this for the first time, it may be a little difficult to get started. So some inspirational things. Here's some cool directional contrast is going on here. You've got some diagonal text happening. Um, there's some contrast in terms of size. Really interesting. How about overlapping? Overlapping letter forms, overlapping lines of text, overlapping paragraphs. You can kind of see here how a sense of tension is created because so many elements are being overlapped. We get a sense of, oh my gosh, it's full, it's packed. So you're creating a sense of tension. Pattern, again, this is a very simple example, but just merely placing lines of text on a grid, suddenly you start to create a sense of pattern, and you can sort of see that happening here. And these are all options and possibilities for you to execute in your type designs. Again, here's another sense of pattern. Also, there's other things at play here. You've got scale in the terms of the size of different lines of text contrasting with others. You've got color and color value working here to show contrast. Um, Also, overall, if you look at the big picture, it looks like it creates a sense of pattern. Um, there's many things at play here. There's also this sense of structure that's happening. Even though this is very free and sort of random, there's still, when I look at it, when I sort of step back, I see a sense of structure about it. So there, it is possible to have something that is sort of free like this, but yet still mimics a sense of structure. Rhythm, here, this is a great example of rhythm in that as you progress down this poster, you, because based on the style of each typeface, you get a sense of a feel for each one of these words. So, you know, especially the word anger, you see how they chose a very stylized typeface that was kind of ripped up, and it kind of represents anger, hate. It almost has that really dark black kind of like gouging look to it. Each one of these styles are chosen to give you a sense of what the word is about. Fear, it looks like it again, something's been kind of knifed in to a piece of paper. So as you start working with more typefaces beyond this project, because on this project you won't be working with too much type style, and then indeed that's what this is. This is a perfect example of using type style to represent a feeling. um, there's also a sense of rhythm as it leads you down the page going on here. So I think there's a couple things at play here, really good examples. Size contrast, again, I've talked about several of those, but here are some specific ones. You can kind of see how the text in the background is creating a texture, how these lines that kind of cut through the text create a sense of direction, and then that same line is being utilized here over top of the headline. Um, but the large, black, thick shape of this headline versus this thin, small texture in the background shows some real true contrast. Again, the same thing is happening here. Size contrast of the very large dot versus all the tiny kind of similar sized dots all around it. I know this is a simple example, but it really, really drives home the fact that it could be this simple, but be very, very effective. So sometimes, I guess what I like to say at this point is um, sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. So don't go crazy in trying to make these compositions too overworked. And I guess be lighthearted about them as you work through them. Transition and progression. How do we transition from one visual aspect to another? Well, there's several ways we can do that. We can use scale. We can use gray value. And in this example, it's a perfect example of transitioning using gray value from dark to light. Um, type as art. Again, almost this entire project is using type as art. Again, I mentioned it in the project handout, and I want to reemphasize it here that this really is probably the only project you do in this program where you're going to be free from having to sell a product or create a commercial piece. This is I believe, the back cover of the first piece I showed you, where again, there's a lot of profound messages here. And again, this is a propaganda piece, but yet the way it's been handled and the way it's been laid out on the page with all these like sweeping organic pieces of text over, text on and path and text contouring to certain areas of the piece and all this inclusion of all this secondary art everywhere. It's very experimental, and I just love this stuff, and I hope that this book opens a new light for you and you start to explore typography beyond this typefaces book, because there's so much you can do with it if you're allowed to. A lot of times the client wants you to fill up their pages with logos and advertising products, and you don't really get a chance to do this kind of fun stuff. But um, the day will come. One day will come, and you will be able to explore and use type as art. Um, and hopefully, you'll have this experience to call upon. So, hopefully, this was inspirational and helping you to sort of see what you can do. There's a lot of examples here. I highly recommend you download this PDF, take a look at them, study them for yourselves. And if you have any questions, you can post those in the weekly problems and solutions. Until next time, happy book designing.